Hello, everybody. Welcome to our day early comic review show. I'm Jason,
I'm Andy.
and we're with Infinity Flux Comics out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. So every Tuesday, after we're done bagging and boarding the comics, Andy and I we divide up the ones that we most want to read and the ones that we think most people want to hear about, and we read them and give you guys this short style review of each one, where we'll generally tell you what they're about more than you'll hear in the solicitations, but we won't spoil everything for you. We'll tell you if there's a major first appearance or a major death, but we might not tell you who. We're definitely not going to tell you all the fun details you'll have if you read it for yourself.
It's funny, when you do that intro, when you say that we divvy up the comics, I don't think people could see that you do this motion like we're literally like, we both have one comic and we're ripping it in half because we both want to read it so bad. Not saying it doesn't happen, just thought people should know how serious we take this.
This week was pretty easy. Although there are some major number ones, there's a lot of number twos. And so that tends to go to, if Andy already reviewed the number one, there's no reason I would review the number two.
Right.
So I think you'll hear a lot of that. So right away you can see some of the big ones out in front of us, but we have stacks to the side. So let's get started without further ado.
Yeah, I'm starting off with one that is actually not a number one or number two. It's a number 8. But I liked it so much, I thought I got to start off with this one. This is Joker number 8. So I think there's a little bit of buzz around this one because this is the origin of Vengeance. So Vengeance has been in this since
issue 2.
Issue 2? Yeah, when we got that mystery variant cover that had her on and everything. And we knew this is the daughter of Bane. But we didn't really know a whole lot of backstory. I will say this is about as laid out for you of a backstory as you can get. So it begins with Vengeance taking Gordon and basically telling her that she needs Commissioner Gordon for something. And he's basically like, who are you? Like, why should I work with you? And she tells him her origin, which, as you read the character, there's no reason to think that she's making any of this up. And it is really good. So much so that now I'm like, oh, now this is the character I want to know the most about. So you find out why she's called Vengeance, which is not a thing I really thought about going into this, but vengeance for what? Or vengeance for who?
Yeah,
that is answered.
Vengeance has to have purpose.
Right. And does she even know that purpose? There you find out, is she actually the daughter of Bane, and how does that work? You find out if she had Joker right in front of her, what she would do. And it is very brutal. But in a way, you come out of this issue thinking, is she really a villain, or could she possibly be a new anti-hero we see pop up? So I thought this issue was great. Of course, Gilliam March's art is fantastic. But I was just kind of amazed by this character that I thought was interesting. But when you really see the story behind her and where she came from, I think people are really going to be hooked on this character. And I think this could cement her as a character, unless, they kill her off at the end of the series or whatever. I think you're going to see this character stick around. So if this gives any more credence to maybe she would go grab her first appearance or whatever, I think this is a great issue to pick up to find out more about this character.
Yeah, the name Vengeance to me sounds anti-hero. Bane, definitely a villain. Vengeance, Ghost Rider is the spirit of vengeance. Of course, that's over in Marvel. But, vengeance doesn't sound like you're just crazy or you're out for power. You're out for something that's bigger than that to you. Right. Something that matters.
And we learn vengeance has to be a personal thing.
Yeah.
Vengeance can't be given to you. You can't be like, hey, you go take vengeance on that person. No, it's something that you have to feel.
Right.
It's a personal thing, and that is heavily dealt with in here about, is she exacting vengeance for herself or for somebody else? And what does that mean? So
I will be definitely reading that later.
Yeah, it is great. This series has been fantastic so far. I mean, there's of course still a lot of talk about tying in on Batman and everything, but I think Joker is, I mean, just as good, just as page turning of a read. So this is our A cover, of course, the March cover. I did want to point out something really cool as I show you these variant covers as well. So here is the Molina variant, and something cool that DC, I think this may be the first week of them doing. I'd have to go back and check to see, did I just miss it or whatever. But this is really cool. So we, when we do the show, like to tell you who does the variant covers, all of that. Sometimes that's pretty hard information to find. I don't want to say often, but it happens.
Yeah.
Every few weeks, they will get the information wrong on the interior about who did the art. You kind of have to know what an artist's style looks like to be like, it's actually not them. But DC is now doing a thing where if you look at the barcode, let's see if I can get it without the glare, there's a small black bar that runs alongside of it. Even here, it's hard to see because it's so fine. But it says variant cover by, and it gives you the artist's name. And one, that is super cool.
Yep.
Me being an artist, you always need to give credit for an artist's work. And a lot of the times, cover work doesn't get the kind of recognition it needs, especially on A covers. Because usually people are just talking about the variants. But I was shocked to see also the A covers have the same thing. And then it just says cover by. So this is awesome. Major props to DC for giving artists the recognition they deserve for not only the variant covers, because we've gotten those on occasion. Marvel does. Like the Stormbreaker variants will have their names on it a lot of the times. But to see on the A covers and the variants, awesome to see that. So
I agree. In addition, for collectors, you have a certain artist you like. Well, you're at your comic shop. You see a cover. Is that them? Can't tell. Now, look at the barcode on DC. You'll know for sure if it's them.
Yep. So this one is by Aki Bright, which is a really awesome punchline cover. A lot to look at there, what she has strewn about her, sitting on her throne. Really cool. But I think all but maybe one variant this week has that on it. And I think it's because maybe that variant was supposed to come out before, or it was done before the kind of when they started doing this. But yes, and then finally we have the 1 in 25, which this one is awesome and kind of scary and crazy. This is the Stoko variant. And this one we are selling to our customers for $35. It's hard to even tell it's Joker, but yeah.
As people who run a comic shop, DC's always been a little bit more about information on their covers, because I know when we get collections, they used to have the year, sometimes the month and the year, and they did that for ages, and I love it. Like, it's so much easier than me having to look it up. A lot of it I know just off the top of my head, but certain in-between issues, I always enjoyed that. So hopefully DC, they're returning to form. Maybe they could teach some of these other companies to do a little bit of that.
Yes.
So I read Batman the Imposter #1. This is a new 3-issue Black Label miniseries. Now, this is not set in regular continuity. It's its own thing. And there's a few ways I knew it when I read it. To begin with, this isn't set in modern DC. In it, somebody actually mentions that Batman has been in action for about 3 years. Which is funny because the solicitation says Batman's been only in action for a year. But I'm going to go with what the writing inside says. So Batman has been doing this thing for about 3 years. First, I want to talk about the art. I think the art style by Andrea Sorrentino is really creative art style. If you've seen Sorrentino's art, you kind of know that.
Gideon Falls, and works with Jeff Lemire a lot.
Correct, yeah. Not afraid to break out of just the boxes that typical art is in. It sort of just bleeds where it needs to bleed, and a box with somebody is put where it needs to be put. So really creative art that shows action real well in that way too, where something will happen amongst a big scene, but there'll be a little box where it's like, your eye is supposed to notice this.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. It gives it a little bit more of a cinematic feel that you're piecing together in your own mind. The coloring's also very interesting. It's very vivid coloring, but only using a few colors at a time. So night scenes are done with blues, and action scenes are done with reds, with of course black
Mm-hmm.
to outline everybody. So I had to start by just talking about the art a little bit. Now, what is the book about? I think the title says a lot. It's called Batman the Imposter. So Batman has made friends of the cops. Cops like him, the city generally likes him, but business people don't. Now, why don't business people like Batman? Well, when he takes down criminals, usually a lot of property damage
Yeah,
occurs. On top of that, as you'll read, if you pick this up, it seems like some of these business people, maybe they're linked in with the criminals too.
especially in Gotham.
Yeah, I mean that's almost a given in Gotham. So if you're not on the take, you're going to get acid in the face and be a villain after so long, no matter what. So the business people are kind of bugging the cops about Batman and why aren't you doing anything about him? Well, all of a sudden, as the cops in this, it focuses on one particular. All of a sudden, as the cops are sort of like, hey, he's not that bad. You business people get over it. Another Batman is seen on video and he starts killing people.
Mm.
And I don't mean just at random. I don't mean he goes into a crowd. You'll have to see what he does. It's more of a in the background, in the shadows. Maybe the way Batman would kill people if he were the type sort to kill criminals. Well, this is caught on video, and now the cops are under pressure to arrest Batman. Now, of course, it's not him. In fact, Bruce in this is his real identity is known by an old friend. It's somebody who appears in certain Batman things and other things doesn't, has been around for a long time off and on. You'll have to see who this character is. But she learns early into this who Bruce Wayne really is. And so now there's also a conflict with her about, am I going to tell on you or not? And are you okay to do this? Like, are you a normal person who doesn't need psychiatric help that you're even doing this? So that is what the story is about. Bruce is trying to figure out what to do about this imposter. His friend is figuring out how can I help him the best, and should I turn him in or not? Um, and there are police that want to like Batman, but now they're under severe pressure to have to bring him in. So it's a Black Label story. I didn't think it was super bloody or super dark. They might be saving that for the next two. So that's generally what it's about.
I know they made, I forgot who they were interviewing about Black Label, but they said it doesn't necessarily now mean mature. It just means kind of out of continuity stories,
Okay.
which it's kind of always been, but I think it's more lean towards mature. I think now it's just like out of continuity, mature storytelling type.
I just think
feel.
every time they start something with Black Label, everyone's waiting for the next Batman Damned scandal.
Yeah.
We're like, where is it? What's going to happen in this
Everybody's
one?
looking in the shadows. Is there anything hidden in the shadows?
A costume mishap or something. Okay, so we have this great variant by Lee Bermejo doing his thing. I mean, he could just have a huge book of his awesome Batman art at this point. He probably does.
It's great to see him draw Batman. I always wonder what his Batman would look like.
And then here is the 1 in 25 Andrews variant that we are selling to our customers for $25. Got the sort of mirror image Batman's.
Plural Batman.
Yep.
Okay, my next one is the final part of War of the Bounty Hunters. So this, of course, is the series about how Boba Fett loses Han and Carbonite. I say it like Han and Carbonite because that's like how the action figure is always called. He loses Han, but while Han is in Carbonite. And who is now vying for him, and there was a big auction to see who could get him until Darth Vader came in and said, doesn't matter what y'all are doing, I'm taking him. So this is the final part of that story. Of course, Boba Fett does not have Han back. We know he ends up with him. We know he ends up delivering Han to Jabba in the end. But this is a story about how we got there and what happens along the way. And so this one is really cool because this is kind of everyone's making their final plays to get Han. So the Hutts who think that they have won Han fair and square in the auction for him, that Kira from Solo has put on with her criminal organization Crimson Dawn. And the Hutt say, well, we want him fair, so we're going to get him from the Empire. However, then you have Boba Fett going after him, saying, I actually deserve him. You stole him from me in the first place. So this is everyone going at each other 100%. Everybody's now on their ships. They're attacking. And you have Leia and Lando and Chewbacca going after him as well. So they all make a big play for it. You'll have to read it to get all the details about it. But the big thing about this is Crimson Dawn, this criminal organization, we find out that there may be more to them than what we have known in the series so far, to a pretty big extent. So there's not a whole lot to say about this issue without giving away exactly how it ends or what happens, because you know where Han ends up at the end. But some key things to mention about this is it's revealed, and I think it was revealed online a day or so ago, but this is actually part one of a trilogy of stories. So War of the Bounty Hunter is the first one. The next one that we do know, it's coming in December, is, let's see, it is Crimson Reign, which is part two. And then they tell us that in 2022 we're getting Hidden Empire, which is the part three of this story. So what started out as a story about Boba Fett losing Han has turned now into a series about Crimson Dawn, this criminal organization that has ties to so many different things. We learn a lot about them in here that maybe they're more widespread than we think. And a thing I wanted to mention too is at the end of this, there's something that happens between Boba Fett and Jabba that, if you know about the storyline of the Book of Boba Fett coming out later this year, that may hint at what kind of power Boba Fett's going to have now that he has taken over kind of Jabba's throne. So it's really interesting to read that if you kind of figure out how all these chess pieces have been moved, that you see maybe a glimpse of what's to come. But a great issue. There may be some first appearances in a big, kind of a big reveal scene of a bunch of characters. It's hard to say without like knowing what their names are or anything and going through. Have we seen these anywhere else? But needless to say that the Crimson Reign coming up is going to be a very big storyline as well. This was a really fun 5-issue series, and I'm glad it doesn't just end here, that it's going to be continuing on elsewhere.
Yeah, that is very exciting.
So we have some really nice variants for this. This is the Pagulayan variant, which, I mean, I did not see this cover before, and this is one of the coolest covers. Feels like this one should almost be an incentive.
All the detail.
Yeah, really cool. We have the John Tyler Christopher action figure variant, which we have our character Valence, who has been the main character in Bounty Hunter, and some big stuff with him happens in this issue, and let's just say I don't know if he's going to be in Bounty Hunters going forward. That's not a spoiler. Next we have the Carbonite variant, which are all these gray variants. Then we have the Handbook variant, which I'm glad to finally see these with the text on them, because we couldn't see the text when they were soliciting them, but these are really cool bios and history of the characters. And then we have the Lucasfilm 50th Anniversary variant, this time with Anakin and Ahsoka on it. And one other thing to add to this Star Wars bundle, there is another book coming later, but we also got Dr. Aphra number 15, which also wraps up her part in War of the Bounty Hunters. This was a really good issue. You find out kind of some of the same information you find out in War of the Bounty Hunters number 5, but you find out kind of how Dr. Aphra ties in with it. Really great final issue of this, and sets up some pretty crazy stuff going forward for this series coming soon.
Do you think it makes a difference which order you read them?
I would say read War of the Bounty Hunters 5 first, because there's some stuff you learn about Crimson Dawn in it, I feel like would kind of take some of the sting out of it if you read this one first. It's kind of presented in a bigger way in the other one, so I would definitely do that. And we have some variants for that as well. So we have the Lucasfilm 50th anniversary, this time with the Clone Wars, with Mace Windu and some clone troopers. We have the Handbook variant, this time with Bosk. And we have the Carbonite variant. So that wraps up this Star Wars event, but I've got something really cool coming up later too that's a whole new Star Wars series.
All right, so also from Marvel, but not from the galaxy far, far away part of Marvel, I read Kang the Conqueror #3. This is the 3rd issue of this 5-issue miniseries, all about Nathaniel Richards, a different Kang than we know, who in issue 1 was being trained by the Kang we're more used to seeing. But Nathaniel, he hasn't turned into sort of the hardened person he may one day be. Instead, he still has emotions. It's really sort of given the writers the chance to show us, can Kang ever be anything different than what we expect? What it's good when you take a villain that's so tough like that and you show this villain back when they were human. And so issue #3, I read it, and what I'll say is, if you thought all of the time travel stuff for the last 2 issues was pretty heavy, wait till you read this one. I mean, there's Kang, there's another Kang, there's several other Kangs, and then, of course, there's Doctor Doom, who is Kang's ancestor, who comes back. Many battles between these characters, some very cool stuff between Doom and Kang, Kangs fighting. So the thing I would say is, if you read this stuff, don't focus on time paradoxes. You just have to assume that overall Kang, and I don't necessarily mean Nathaniel, but Kang, maybe there's an alpha one, I don't know,
Say, is there
an Omega
Prime or something?
Is beyond all that. Like, it's all sort of worked out or whatever. Because some of the things that go on, it's like, I had the knee-jerk of, well, if you do that, then some of that gets addressed a little bit in this issue, however. But I think I enjoyed it more when I said, okay, I'm just going to take off the paradox thinking cap and just enjoy it for the ride. Much more enjoyable that way.
Kang looks at a photo of himself and it's slowly fading from it.
Fades away. Yeah, or his costume changes into Ramatut or whatever. So, I suggest if you read this one, just enjoy the story and the surprises inside, because there are some good surprises inside. And, as we saw in the last issue, Nathaniel is doing everything for Ravonna.
Mm-hmm.
He sort of fell in love with her in the last issue. And what I will say without revealing much is that this whole thing may end up also being her story. So, not to say there's lots of her in this, but there's something to do with her that looks like there's a lot more that's going to happen with her, which I'm really happy about that. So we have this variant by Ron Lim, the man himself, the time-traveling artist himself.
Only way you could do that many covers is being a time traveler. So people could probably tell us in the comments, does Marvel work off of that like branching timeline where if you go back and change something it creates a new timeline?
Typically.
Or I thought that's what it did. And so Kang is just creating thousands like per day with all the little things he
thinking more about what you said, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Marvel does the multiple timelines or if they do. I'm actually not sure.
Yeah, I know they addressed it a lot in like the Loki show and everything, but I'm not sure comic wise, because I think X-Men have done one thing, but then when Avengers do it, it's something else, and I guess it's kind of up to whatever the story needs.
Well, that will not be cleared up in issue 3 of Kang the Conqueror, I'll tell you.
Maybe by the end of the series we get a definitive timeline.
Some good action, though, and I mean, if you want to see Doctor Doom fight Kang, this is your issue.
That's cool. So my next one is. Wait, didn't we just talk about this? Yes, it is Amazing Spider-Man. This is issue 76. This book is going to be coming out a lot. Now there is a break after this one. There's a 2-week break, but I think we are roughly getting about 3 issues a month of Amazing Spider-Man, starting last week with issue 75. So this one picks up right where the last one ended, and we are with Ben Reilly, who is now the legal user of the name Spider-Man. Through some, very comical turn of events, he has the legal rights to call himself Spider-Man and be the official Spider-Man. He seeked the blessing of Peter Parker in the last one, which he kind of did, kind of didn't. He kind of was more like, I'm going to be Spider-Man whether you like it or not, so get used to it. So that doesn't sit well now with Ben Reilly. He's like, I'm not comfortable being Spider-Man unless I really get Peter Parker to say, it's okay. But if you have read the last issue, something very big happened in the end where you learn that Ben Reilly now has the Beyond Corporation backing him up. That means he has upgraded technology. He has a better suit. Peter Parker's still working off of his. I guess he still just sews his own suits. I'm sure he
stretchy
gets
spandex.
his stretchy spandex that doesn't do a whole lot for
Maybe
him.
one Reed Richards made for him that dries quick or something.
Yeah, but it doesn't have too much extra armor or padding in it. Well, big thing happened the last one with between them fighting the U-Men, and now Peter Parker is in the hospital. He's of course he's still Spider-Man. He's got some healing abilities and everything, but is it enough? Because this was a lot of radiation and everything. The U-Men use more of there's vapor, there's X-ray, so they can be pretty harmful people. So now Peter Parker's in the hospital, as you see. Not really a spoiler because it's on the cover, but Ben Reilly goes to seek his approval in the hospital. You'll have to read this to see where it ends up. But at the end, it looks like, I don't want to spoil it, but Ben Reilly is going to be around for a while. And some pretty serious stuff. I do love that. I think everyone kind of thought in issue 74 something would happen to take Peter Parker off the table and be like, no, this is only about Ben Reilly. He either dies or something happens. That didn't happen in 74, but we do learn now why Ben Reilly has to be the Spider-Man going forward. We even see there's the new Daredevil series coming up called Devil's Reign, that event book, that Ben Reilly is the Spider-Man in the crossover for that. So he's here to say whatever teams they form or whatever, he's going to be the one in them. But our focus is also not just on him. It looks like we're still going to be following what's going on in the Peter Parker sphere of influence with Mary Jane and Aunt May and all of that. So this is a really good issue, I will say, because it is kind of a decompressed story, because we are getting so many issues. Not as much happens in it, but I do think story points get a little bit more breathing room, which I do appreciate. Sometimes you read an issue and you're like, that was too much they crammed in there. This one is not that way, and not to a fault, but you do get a chance to kind of be with the characters during some quieter moments along with some fighting moments. So I really like this issue. I'm very excited to see going forward what's going to be going on in Amazing Spider-Man, because we're still, I feel like, building up to kind of the first big story arcs. We're still getting into it. We have a variant. This is the 1 in 25 Gleason variant, and this is a fantastic cover.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about that cover.
Yes, I think when people saw this cover originally, they were like, he's dead. You'll have to read it to find out kind of what's behind this cover. It's even cool. You can barely see it. At first I thought it was a smudge on the cover. There's spiders dangling down from the top of it. It's really cool. We are selling this one to our customers for $45. And man, Gleason is the artist on this issue as well. He was the artist on the last one. Some of the best Spider-Man art you'll see. He just knocks it out of the park with this one.
Okay, so one of my two favorite reads this week, I picked out two favorites, and one of them is Deadbox #2. I'm really happy to report that because I really like #1. Now, I didn't plan this, but I'm wearing my Ice Cream Man shirt today. You can kind of see it. And I have to say, Deadbox is definitely reminding me of Ice Cream Man. It is different, though. It is not quite as dark and grim. It has a bit more levity to it, but it's still pretty messed up. In fact, so what are we looking at on the cover here? This has to do with the movie that gets rented. But there are actually three plot lines going on in this book at the same time that all have to do with each other. So, Deadbox takes place in a little small American town called Lost Turkey. That is the name of the town. And the theme of this issue is societal conformity and how it just isolates people, how it makes us feel bad, how it just messes up people's communication and relationships. I can't go into a point by point, but if you read it, it is deeply there. This is not me looking into this going, I see what they're doing here. It is a lot about societal conformity. The most I can say about the situation is there's a husband and wife. It seems like the relationship is fine, but they have a comical misunderstanding about cross-dressing. Okay? There's no big point being made here. It is literally a comical misunderstanding, but because of societal pressures, it like ruins their marriage. You know, it's something, it makes you laugh, but at the same time you feel bad for them.
Yeah.
Well, the wife, she's feeling bad. She goes to the Deadbox. She needs to rent something to make her feel good. So she rents a rom-com. So the rom-com in this, it is about these two scientists who are a couple, and they work for a corporation, and they do experiments on animals, you know, to find out how the minds work. Well, there's only one bonus check this year, and whatever one of them does the best gets the bonus check. So of course that's bad for their relationship. So you're getting to see pieces of this rom-com movie while you're also seeing what's going on with the husband and wife. And then the third story is our main character Penny's story. I'll get back to that in a minute. So as far as the monkey experiments, the husband and or I guess they're a couple. It doesn't really say if they're husband and wife. They do these experiments on the monkeys to prove certain things, and of course this was reflecting the other story that the couple's going through with their misunderstanding, and it has a lot to do with why do people do what they do in groups? Why, you know, it's done really well. It's not heavy-handed. It's funny, but it's messed up, but it's really thoughtfully written. So if you like Ice Cream Man, get Deadbox. I have no idea why you wouldn't see this as being like just another great one like that. Meanwhile, they haven't forgot our character Penny introduced in the first one. She's the one with the sick dad. She's still trying to get his medication, but the medication costs more, as so often happens. And so she's hearing about what's going on with them, but she's dealing with her own thing. Meanwhile, in the background, some new characters have rolled into town, and I suspect they'll be at the Deadbox next week.
So when they go to the box, does it say Deadbox on it?
Yes.
Wow, that should be a red flag.
And I like how Ice Cream Man's great and all, but in this, the characters are sticking around a bit more. So I think we're getting pieces of them, and they're going to stick around too. So it's not super horror. That's what I would say. It's a little bit of existential horror. It's more like thoughtful and satirical so far. Very good writing. I think it's exactly one of the things I want out of an indie comic. There's many levels of indie comic I want, but this is a good example of one.
From what I saw, with you showed me, it has a pretty good sense of humor too.
Yeah.
It's not. It takes itself seriously, but not to the point of ruining, you know, the chance for a good gag or whatever.
That's true. Yeah, it gets satirical, but it can also throw in like an inane gag, you know, if it's worth it.
Yeah.
And I'm a big movie fan, so I just can't wait to see what the next movie run it is. You know, the first one we had the sci-fi movie, now we have a rom-com, and I think they're being interwoven with the story really well. So, Here is the variant. This is the Howl variant. I do have to say, so both these characters are in it, but this whole needle thing, I don't know what that's about. Like, I almost feel like this cover was done maybe before the plot was written, or maybe for next issue, because those characters are in it, but I don't quite understand. Or maybe that's the,
Is that them experimenting on the animals or something?
maybe. Yeah, I don't recall it from the plot. Still, excellent issue. I do still highly recommend it.
Awesome. So my next one is uh, Batman, the Audio Adventures Special. So this is apparently I haven't listened to it yet, but it is a podcast done by HBO Max that is kind of in your style of traditional radio dramas, like your old The Shadow,
Yeah.
or Green Hornet, and this definitely feels somewhat like that. I would say it's a little bit more modern storytelling. They're not quite going for the level of camp that when people try to replicate that time period of storytelling they do. But it does have a through line. I will say this is a oversized one shot, so this is 80 pages, and it is $9.99, and it's a prequel to that podcast. But it has a through line of this guy giving you a tour of Gotham in a very kind of classic radio, classic TV feel, where he's taking you to all of the sites you might want to see. And of course, in Gotham, some of them are not so great. You know, the Iceberg Lounge.
Do you go to Crime Alley?
I think he goes to Crime Alley. You know, we've got to at one point end up at a certain carnival or amusement park that is run by someone not so savory. But interwoven in this is almost like commercial breaks. He's like talking, he's like, and we'll be right back after this, and then you get a short story in it. So those are done by different creative teams. There's one writer who kind of goes through all of them. I'm guessing kind of to keep them all coherent. But they're all different artists, different styles, focusing on different characters. So in that way, this is kind of an anthology book. We're seeing a lot of those lately, but this is cool. So the first one is where Batman is first teams up with the Gotham City Police Department, and it's funny because I guess I was expecting more humor or more satire in this, but I found this one, even though it has a little bit more cartoony art style, to be pretty interesting. Where it's clearly early-ish in Batman's career, and he's decided, you know, it would help me if I teamed up with the GCPD, but at what cost? Will that take away some of the kind of the mystique that's around me, some of the fear and intimidation that I can use on criminals? So this is when he first gets the bat signal and all of that. And I was like, this is actually a very interesting Batman story about, you know, do I work with the police or not, because of you know, that's going to put me more in the limelight and showing that I'm working with these people. So that was a really good story. There's also the story, which was a little bit more funny, of a new criminal coming to Gotham. He's kind of from outside. He's coming in, and basically everyone tells him, when you come into Gotham, if you're going to be a criminal, like overlord, mastermind, you got to have a shtick. You got to have something. And so it's him trying to figure out, what is my thing going to be, and do I really need one? And of course, in Gotham, you got to have a thing. So he goes to, he's kind of thinking about, like, well, what do I do? Like, do I have a thing that I'm always doing? Is there a certain weapon I always used? And it's really funny, and it's kind of like, I imagine, like, in Gotham, they have to have these thoughts about, what's my character going to be, and I've got to stay on theme. So that is a really fun story. That one has a lot of humor in it, especially where there's like a market where all the villains go to get their weapons and stuff. That one's really good. There's a few other stories. There's a Catwoman story. There is a penguin story that takes place in the Iceberg Lounge, all interwoven with this guy kind of giving you a tour of Gotham. Um, Also, some notable writers in this, which I thought were very interesting. Um, Bobby Moynihan does co-writes one of them from SNL and various other things, but classic. He was in. He always ends up playing a stormtrooper in SNL skits, which is great. Paul Scheer, of course, of How Did This Get Made? And he had that little mini Marvel documentary about how to reboot and make a new Marvel property. And Heidi Gardner, who is also a fairly new cast member of SNL over the past few years. So you've got some really like good comedy minds in this as well. And at the end of it, it does say continued in the HBO Max podcast. So I haven't listened to that yet, so I don't know quite how this is a prequel to that. But it's a lot of fun. If you just like classic Batman stories, it had a lot of Batman the Animated Series feel to a lot of the stories. The art style tends to lean more towards kind of the cartoony, less the grim and gritty Batman. But overall, a very fun issue, and I think if you're just wanting a fun bunch of Batman stories, this is a great one to pick up. We also have the Francis Manapul variant, which also it does say his name down there on the barcode, so you can check that out. Also, really funny the story where the guy is trying to figure out what his thing's going to be in Gotham. Uh, in the beginning, Batman catches him and basically tells him like, "Oh, I was going to send Robin after you." And so this is a thing that all the supervillains are like, "Oh, you're one of the Robin level villains. Like Batman would have sent Robin after you," and they're trying to get out of that like bubble of you're not quite up to fighting Batman yet. So great comedy in this, but varies in levels of comedy. Also, some pretty interesting meta commentary on Batman.
Is that a one shot?
I believe it's just a
That's
one
what I
shot.
thought.
Yeah, yeah, but recommended for sure.
Okay, so I'm here to talk about our third Batman book of the week. That's right. First
I'm
we
checking
had
to see. Do I have more Batman books? Okay, I think I'm done with Batman.
first
I've got
we had
Harley.
Batman the Imposter. Then we had the audio, and now I'm going to talk about this is my other favorite pick of the week, Batman '89 issue 3. Now I raved about issue 1. Issue 1 I thought was awesome. Issue 2 I thought was really good as well. Issue 3 is my favorite one. That is what I will say. This was a really good read. Afterwards, I was talking to Andy about it briefly, and I said, it's like every 2 pages, something really cool and awesome is happening.
Mm.
The pacing is just excellent. It really is. So, even the beginning. So, this has a multiple surprise beginning. I'm not joking. So, I'm not going to take everyone back to the end of issue 2, but those of you who read issue 2, it ends with where I think you'd expect you know where it's going. Well, I cracked this open. I'm like, what? This is not the outcome I expected at all. And then there were further surprises. So wait for the multiple surprise endings. I mean, right off the bat, I was just shocked with how much I enjoyed the opening of issue 3. And then after that, we get to see our first uncostumed team up of Batman and the new Robin, the one, for Batman '89.
Mm-hmm.
They're not in costume, so it's a team up that they don't even know they're having,
Mm-hmm.
really. But it's done very cleverly.
That's
and
fun.
yeah, I thought that was a great way for them to do it. I also found out this week, I didn't know about this, but originally Marlon Wayans was cast to be the next Batman if Tim Burton had done, or I'm sorry, the next Robin.
Okay.
Marlon Wayans was going to be the next Robin if Tim Burton had done a third movie. And so I think this character Drake is supposed to sort of be
Mhm.
Marlon Wayans, which is cool,
That
the
is
Wayans
cool.
brother. So just something I thought I'd pass on there. Um, Anyhow, so last issue, of course, there was a building on fire. There were people in it. Who's going to run in, help people? Well, I won't tell you all of what happens, but let's just say in the end, Bruce Wayne is caught by the public being a hero. And it's a problem for him, okay? So, we all know he's Batman. Of course he's a hero. But as Bruce Wayne, he wants to stay out of that light.
Yeah.
So some of this few is definitely, they see him do something heroic, and it's like, oh, Bruce Wayne, you're a hero. We're putting you on the news, and we're going to call you superhero Bruce Wayne. And he hates it. It's terrible for him.
That's funny.
So, yeah, that's yet one of the many other things that happens in this. Catwoman has a few really cool key moments in this. And you also learn that Alfred might not be much of a cat person himself. Just a little funny detail there.
I can imagine he doesn't like the hair everywhere. It makes his job a little bit harder.
You're pretty close. You're pretty close. And so let's get back to Two-Face, though. So I'm not going to tell you how this all goes down, but as Two-Face is forming in the mind of Harvey Dent, it's forming in Harvey's injured mind, I should say. It's like there's multiple hymns, which makes sense for Two-Face, but one is sort of like showing him the best possible reality he could have lived, and then he gets to see several others, but it seems like the other is from almost like the darkest timeline, to borrow some from Community, if anyone who's seen that. It's really cool seeing them interact. Like, seeing him form into Two-Face in this is one of the best ways I've seen it done. It's really good. I mean, I'll read one line from it. So one quote is, "You'll get to see an infinite garden of forking paths." I mean, that's some top level comic writing.
Yeah.
That's like, some like, wow, did you just get out of your poetry class? It's really good writing. I have to say that I petition for Sam Hamm to keep writing comics. Anyone who has any clout in the industry, hire this guy, because he needs to be writing more comics. This comic has a lot of forward momentum. Just like I said, no wasted parts. It was exciting. It was interesting. It was funny. You also get to see Two-Face's first coin flip in this.
Oh.
What will it be about, and how will it end up? So that is my other favorite week. Deadbox and Batman 89 issue 3, easily the two I was just happily turning the pages on. So we have a variant. This is the Lee Weeks variant. And I'll tell you, inside it says this variant is by Mitch Gerards. I would have thought that had Andy not discovered the barcode trick. He showed me, I see Lee Weeks' name on it, and then I looked, and sure enough, the signature was there. So,
very interesting little, who gets what information about who's the artist on the cover, who gets it last, who gets it correct.
I know, yeah.
So my next one is the one I mentioned earlier. This is our new Star Wars miniseries, Star Wars High Republic Trail of Shadows. This is cool because I keep up with pretty much everything Star Wars, not just comics, but novels and everything else. It's like my second job. And this one definitely picks up some of the threads from the novels, but I don't think it is would impede anyone from getting into it, because this is a Star Wars detective story. So you have our two characters, which I believe this is the first appearance of both of them. There is Emmerich, who is a Jedi Knight, but it seems like he's got a little taste for the detective work. I mean, he's asking the questions and everything, so it doesn't, I don't think, flat out say that like that's his job in the Jedi is being a detective, but he's got some feelings for that. The other character is C.N. Holt, who is a like straightforward investigator. And what has happened is there was an attack on a planet by the Nile, who are the big bads of the High Republic at this point, and they were able to put two Jedi in like a state of shock, and one Jedi who was considered one of the greatest Jedi of this time, basically turn him to ash, and to the point of like when he's investigating the thing, he like reaches down and like touches part of him and it just crumbles off. Like, wow. Pretty scary stuff. So the head of the Jedi at this point, the council, one of the council members, puts Emmerich in charge of, you need to find out, do the Nile have a weapon that can do that to us? And there is a little hint to, they've been really close guarding this this place on this planet, this base. Start looking there. And I believe I haven't read this one novel yet. I have it, but I haven't read it. That they make reference to that. I believe this place is brought up in there. So all these are very interconnected, which I appreciate. So he is going to investigate that. On the other side, we have CN Holt, who is basically trying to track down someone who is on parole, but maybe not following their rules of their parole. They're getting involved in some criminal activity, and it's her job to go to some of the seedier places on Coruscant and track him and find out what he's up to. And apparently he's also into some stuff that is no good, that may be tied to what's going on with the other character in their investigation. So it's really cool. I love it's kind of what the Marvel movies have done, that I think is a very strong idea of a Star Wars story doesn't just have to be, Jedi versus Sith or this classic big grandiose storytelling. You can have things that are set in the Star Wars universe, but a separate genre.
Right.
Marvel did that where Winter Soldier is like an espionage movie, and Ant-Man is kind of a heist movie, and all that. I think Star Wars works really well when it has a very clear storytelling area it's working in, and this one is a detective story. I'll say he doesn't get into the detective part too heavily. It's mostly setting up what the mystery is going to be. I will say the two characters that are on the cover that look buddy-buddy do not meet in this issue. There are two separate storylines running parallel. But I love to see the kind of... you get Jedi stuff, but her as an investigator, you just get, like, cool, what does someone in the Star Wars universe, how do they track people, and what kind of espionage do they do? So this is a really cool book. There's some characters you may have questions about, like, why is this person giving this character directions? That kind of comes from knowing a little bit what's going on in the High Republic, but I still think this is a great one to grab. And I believe it's only a 4 or 5 issue miniseries, but I think that these characters are going to play a bigger part going forward, because it seems like they're really setting them up as being ones that they return to later. So this is our A cover, and then we have the Anadito variant, which I think is really funny. On both the covers, you have both the characters standing back to back, looking tough together.
Of what's going to happen.
Yeah,
hopefully.
and these two have not met yet. They are actually on separate planets when this ends. So let's see how quickly it takes them to wind up in the same spot. But really cool issue, and I'm very excited about this series. I think it's kind of one of the most kind of grabbable, readable Star Wars books out right now, because they kind of give you all right there in the beginning, like, here's what our story's going to be about, rather than having to invest in, this is going to be a long-running series.
Yeah, I mean, I read all the Star Wars comics, but also I double grab all the ones with first appearances.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I like detective stuff.
Yes.
So I'm a classic movie person, and so I have tons of reason to check that one out.
Yeah, really cool.
Before I get to my next one, I almost laughed because I was joking about our third Batman book, and when I went to replace it, I didn't even realize I replaced it with a fourth Batman book.
You grabbed another Batman book.
That I'll be getting to a little later. But hey, it's a different Batman, at least. It's definitely not Bruce Wayne Batman in that one. But first, I'm going to go over Miles Morales 31. So last issue was sort of the introduction of his new outfit. It was actually at the very end of 29 was the first panel we had a minute. But issue 30, he was like running all around, talking about how good he looks in it, the way it fit, all that. I mean, it really was. His outfit was the main thing of last issue, in my opinion. So this issue is different. He is out on a date with Starling. They're supposed to be at a movie, but why are they not at the movie? Because they're getting along so well, they'd rather just have conversation. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
I think that feels like some writing where it's like, you've probably really had this happen.
Yeah.
Of course, it can't go that easy for them. They're heroes. So they're getting attacked. Now, who attacks them? I can say it, ain't a spoiler, it ain't no surprise. The end of last issue, we saw Taskmaster was spying on them.
He's also on the cover.
There you go. So yet another way
Proof
to
it's
figure
not a
that
spoiler.
out. So they are attacked by Taskmaster. Now Taskmaster is a terrible villain to attack you because he's just good at everything and he learns all about you, and he was already spying on them. So what's cool about this issue is you get to see Miles and Starling fighting together. We haven't got a whole lot of that, and so now they're kind of a couple, and now they're fighting together against a very dangerous villain. But who hired him? Why does he want to attack them at all? What exactly is he after? By the end of the issue, you will know. I can't necessarily say the fight goes great for them, but let's just say next issue, Miles has a real reason to. He has some real motivation, and let's just say that Miles and Starling's date ends about as bad as a date could end, other than if your date just rejects you. Like if that's not the problem, and there has to be another problem, this is about the worst way a date could end. So then we have the 1 in 25 Sway variant that we are selling for $45 to our customers. And this artist is up and coming.
Yeah.
I remember Megan said, I think he's only like 25 or 23 years old.
And that just makes me angry.
So.
Cool. Yeah, Sway's got that Star Wars variant coming out soon, too, for Dr. Aphra.
Yep.
That I definitely increased our orders on. When I saw it, I was like, okay, this is
so
really
it was
cool.
up finally? Because we did it for Comics of the Future. Okay.
Yeah, there was a cover for it, and it's really nice looking. Okay, my next one is X-Men. This is X-Men number 4. And I have look at this cover. This is the coolest cover with Headless Horseman Cyclops.
Yeah.
Where he's holding his head up and blasting.
That's good.
So if you can't tell from the cover, this is a Halloween issue. And it's not, X-Men Halloween special. This is number 4 of this current X-Men series. It's in continuity, it's everything. But it definitely plays towards the spookiness of a Halloween issue. So I'll definitely say this I love because it reminded me so much of classic X-Men stories. It is about as close to a one and done story as I've seen from an X-Men book. I mean, X-Men is kind of the opposite of a one and done right now. It is, you got to be on for the ride because this, it's a fast moving train.
Well, with Krakoa, they pulled every mutant in the world together, so.
So, of course, this is our X-Men team that are not on Mars. They are still on Earth, and they're kind of the X-Men team. When you need an X-Men team, they're there, ready for action. But this one actually starts at night on the night before Halloween, and it kind of gives you the intro about what the night before Halloween means. I'll say this, you'll have to see it because it's great. They've even decorated I think they're called the Tree House, where they're living. There is a pumpkin on the front of it that is carved to look like Cyclops. And it's, great sense of humor in this, really fun. But somebody is haunting the dreams of the X-Men, and they are going from member to member, kind of showing them some pretty horrifying things, or bringing up stuff from their past, or kind of twisting kind of the character's narrative to scare them. If you know classic Marvel villains, it's not too hard to figure out who this is. But there's also another person, Jean Grey, who can also tap into people's minds, and you get a really fun battle of scary versus fearlessness in this that I love. It. So there's like maybe 3 pages at the end that are tied with the overall story going forward of X-Men that kind of give you some. Meanwhile, over here, this is going on. But the main crux of this issue is kind of a fun, one and done Halloween story, and it's probably one of my favorite issues of the series so far. I've loved this one. This has been a great run of X-Men, even though we're only on issue number 4. And this kind of cements, this is kind of the X-Men book I want to be reading right now, where we can have these fun adventures that, aren't 10 issues long or whatever. We can get some of these fun one-shot stories like classic X-Men used to have. So we have the main cover. Then we have, of course, the Marvel Masterpiece Jusco variant with Cyclops. The Dodderman trading card variant with Sunfire. The 1 in 25 Shalvey variant we are selling for $25. The whole team on it.
Okay, so I read Jeff Lemire's Mazebook #2. So this is written by Lemire. All the art is done by Lemire as well. He did this cover right here. And so I'm going to start off by talking about the art. The art is done in this style. Lemire has sort of a scratchy, moody art style to him. The art is mostly black and white, very intentionally done though, with just little bits of color that have emphasis and meaning. So all that's in there. This, of course, is the book where this father has lost his daughter. She died 10 years ago. And in the middle of the night, he gets a call, and the voice on the other end claims it's his daughter, and she says she's lost in a maze. She's obsessed with mazes, and so that's kind of the premise of the book, and also a lot of what happened in the first one. The first one was learning about the dad. And in this, we learn more about how the daughter was sort of a maze prodigy. She loved mazes, and she would always do them in pen, and was always great at them. Yeah,
when you do it in pen, you're not erasing, pretending like you didn't make that wrong turn.
So after the phone call of last issue, the husband, his name is Will, he goes to his ex-wife. Now, this is a well-known fact that I think over half of couples that lose a kid tend to get divorced. It's one of the worst things people can experience. So this is 10 years later. He goes to his ex-wife who has moved on. He has not. She has moved on. I mean, this guy, this is all he thinks about. He's all beardy and dirty and stuff. And he's not there to ask her to help because she's moved on. He needs his daughter's box of things. He can't get over this call. I mean, how could somebody? Mm-hmm. He thinks that maybe there's a clue in it. And of course, in this box is all the old mazes she used to do. So will he figure out what this maze is, where it is? I will say he's obsessed enough in it that he thinks about it all issue. You'll see in the art where he looks, he sees mazes and things, patterns on the wall, things like that. He has prophetic dreams about mazes, where people talk to him about it, animals talk to him about it. By the end of the issue, he thinks he has figured out maybe where this maze is. And it looks like next issue he's going to head into what he thinks it is. So
cool.
A very interesting book. And we have the variant by Dustin Nguyen with the daughter and a maze.
Cool. So my next one is kind of the opposite of moody and super thought-provoking. This is Harley Quinn, the Eat, Bang, Kill Tour #2. And just like you were saying with Batman 89, how the writer of that needs to continue on writing comics, this doesn't need to just be a mini-series. This needs to be ongoing, whether it's tied with the animated series or not. This writer needs to continue to write Harley Quinn. Because
people have been loving it.
This is so good. Of course, it is very mature. It's always shocking to read a DC book where the language is not either turned into little bats or asterisks and at signs and all of that. But this one, so after the events of the first issue, Harley and Ivy are heading to their honeymoon. There was kind of a weird turn of events in the first one where Ivy didn't get married to who she was supposed to, and then Harley came in and she said yes to Harley, so now Harley's like, that's it, we're together. and they are going on their honeymoon road trip. Along the way, though, Harley figures, I cannot take my pet hyenas with me. Who would be a good person to watch them? Oh, I know,
Yeah.
Catwoman.
Cats. Yep.
Um, this is she's. I love this version of Harley because she has that like super naive, but also just, but always like kind of thinks the best. Like Catwoman's like my best friend. She'll do this, and of course when they show up on Catwoman's front door, Catwoman is like, "No way! I have cats. Those things are gonna eat my cats." And Harley's like, "No, just do this favor for us." It's really fun when Harley goes into her house and is like, "Your house is like really nice," and Catwoman's like, "Yeah, when you're not like a crazy supervillain like you are, you can actually get around to having a pretty nice place when you're not living in chaos like you are all the time." Um, but of course, because of some turn of events, Harley has also brought the Gotham City Police Department and Commissioner Gordon to Catwoman's front steps. So you kind of get a fun mix of the Gotham City Sirens teaming up together. This is super fun. It's kind of like every page there's just joy and excitement and funny and jokes and everything going on that makes it a real page turner just because you're having such a good time reading it. I'm all on board for this series. I hope it continues in whatever form. The art is fantastic. We have a variant cover for it as well. This is the Babs Tar variant.
Yeah, that's what you want from Harley on a road trip. You know, it's
Yeah.
got to be just fun and fast paced.
Exactly, yeah. And you can kind of see Catwoman there. It's a good representation of how she's just not feeling this whole thing. And the stuff with her and her cats is super fun. Great issue, great lighthearted read, but not for small children.
Okay, so only our fourth and final Batman book of the week. I Am Batman #2 launches. This, of course, is by John Ridley with the new Batman, Jace, and in this one, so the other Batman books, it's sort of like they're called Fear State, and it's all about the Scarecrow and all that. This one's also called Fear State, but this is more like, of course, set in the future. It's like he lives in the Fear State that's going to come out of Fear State. That's how
with the
I
magistrate
interpret this.
And all of that.
Correct, because so much of this is about the magistrate. This is where, so masks, of course, that's what they call anybody with a mask, whether you're a hero or villain. Masks are being hunted by the magistrate, but not just by them. In this, you learn that there are citizens, some of them very young, who have banded together, who are now hunting down masks. And they call themselves the Moral Authority. So that's the
It takes a lot of gumption to call yourself the Moral Authority.
Yeah, well, they figure, hey, they're on the side of right. They decide the magistrate is right. Let's take down all the masks. And in this issue, a minor Batman villain / vigilante is killed by them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sparks a big debate on, is this okay? It's one thing to have the magistrate doing it, but what about, the person who does it is a very young individual. And they're like, hey, I'm part of the moral authority, and we're doing what the magistrate said, and I don't feel bad about doing that at all. They shouldn't have worn the mask. That the mask people are the bad guys. So a lot of this issue is sort of a debate about that, and as that goes down. The moral authority, now who pulled them together? It is of course, a rich businessman who is already in prison in another country. He's being extradited. And it seems like he's heading back to Gotham. It seems like they're going to build him up before he's brought back in. His name is Seer, Seer. So it seems like it might be a big character coming up for next Batman. Past that, there's also a lot of discussion in this on the magistrate themselves and if what they're doing is ultimately good and bad and the results of that. So there is a good bit of action in this book, but I found with John Ridley's Batman, he likes to have a lot of talk. He likes to have a lot of talk about I guess, social issues, a lot of talk about right and wrong, about how far to go and consequences of that. So books about 50-50 action,
Mm-hmm.
50-50, well, 50% action, 50% sort of discussions amongst characters who have different ideas of things. So we have this variant by Francisco Mattina. Removing his cowl. His mask, rather.
So, going to briefly talk about this new one, Marvel. It's Marvel Legends Black Panther. This is a mini series, and it follows T'Challa as a kid. It's retelling his origin, but kind of shaking things up a little bit. So I don't think it's necessarily super continuity heavy, because in this they introduce Hunter, uh, who is later known as White Wolf, as his adopted brother, which
Right.
wasn't necessarily in the original version. But it's kind of them as two young kids growing up in Wakanda, and seeing how T'Challa kind of got his sense of right and wrong, his fighting prowess, how he's kind of a rebel even in his family, and what having a brother who looks different than him means growing up there, and the differences they have in that. It looks like the series is going to cover quite a span of time, um, because it even kind of hints at some early stages of not necessarily Black Panther, but um, Wakanda opening up to the rest of the world,
Yeah,
which usually doesn't happen until kind of later in the
correct.
Black Panther story.
And him mean Fantastic Four. They talk about that in the solicitation.
Yes. Also in this, you get like his first interaction with Claw, Ulysses Claw. You do see the classic moment where Claw loses his hand, which is, usually happens later as well. So it's kind of a fun origin, condensed telling of the young life of Black Panther. And I believe it's only about 4 or 5 issues, but I'd say pretty good, all ages, leaning a little bit towards maybe 8 to 12-year olds would probably really like this. We've got some really cool variants for this as well. So you have a Brian Stelfreeze cover with kind of all of the other leaders of Wakanda behind him. And then this one is by Nelson Blake II. You can see T'Challa and Hunter on the cover of that one.
All right, so I read Shang-Chi #5, the 5th part of Shang-Chi versus the Marvel Universe. He's gone up against Captain America and Spider-Man and Wolverine. Well, in this one, he goes up against Iron Man. Whoever thought that him taking over his criminal family would put him at odds with every other superhero who constantly thinks that maybe he has changed. It's been a really good plot line. This one is no different. I have to say, it starts with a great fight, a really good fight scene, where Shang-Chi shows why he is the master of Kung Fu. He does something in it I don't think I've ever seen him do. It has to do with somebody trying to shoot him and how he handles that. I read it, I was like, that's so cool. But there's also stuff in this about Shang-Chi's mother. They had it where he discovered her and she's still alive. They've kind of retconned his mother a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And because originally his mother was just some American woman. And now she, first off, doesn't look that way anymore. And secondly, in this one, she will say where she is from, and it's not where you expect, probably. So it seems his mother has a big story she's going to tell, but little by little. And she is strange. I mean, right down from how she talks to the fact that there are bugs flying around her. There's something going on there. But I don't necessarily think it's sinister. I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think this really is her, and he's about to. I mean, if it is her, I guess he's going to learn something about himself too.
Yeah.
So let's get back to the fighting, though. So for certain reasons, Iron Man has to bust up into Shang-Chi's house. There's something there. They get into a fight. The fight is awesome. That's a lot of comic. Now, who would win, Shang-Chi or Iron Man? And Iron Man knows what he's doing. He's not like showing up going, "Oh, I'm not ready at all." Like he's prepared. Well, let's just say Shang-Chi has to use a lot of different kung fu weapons. I'm a big kung fu movie fan. I love it when they do a scene where they go from kung fu weapon to weapon. And my favorite weapon happens to be a three-part staff. Three-part staffs are awesome. You can use them sort of like a nunchuck. You can wrap around people. You can deflect swords with them. He uses one in this. So right away, I was like, awesome. Whoever's writing this has good taste in their kung fu weaponry. But Shang-Chi's is an adamantium one.
Oh,
so he's got a weapons room he gets Iron Man into, and that evens the odds. And he goes through a slew of weapons trying to fight Iron Man.
Yeah, I love that classic where they're like pulling stuff off the wall as they're fighting, and
yeah. So I mean, just a perfect battle, just what I wanted to see. So the last thing I'll say is there's a surprise ending because I thought by the end of this, okay, well, I think they're wrapping up the Shang-Chi versus Marvel Universe. No, it is not over. When you read the end of this, you'll realize that either they're going to have a big next issue or this might keep going for a while. So pretty interesting ending. And there is a Cho variant for this one, but we are out of it. So that's the only cover I have to show everyone today.
Awesome. So my next one I'm going to talk about is can't really talk about it too much because I am behind on my reading of it, and for me to describe Hulk number 50 would just be a bunch of nonsense. But this is the final issue of Immortal Hulk. The kind of the thing that kicked off Marvel's second printing big thing where everyone wanted second and third printings.
Yeah.
This was kind of one of the first really big series they've had in a long time that people just couldn't stop talking about. Of course, by Al Ewing. So finally wrapping it up, this is a kind of a giant size issue 50. I believe it is $9.99. This awesome wraparound Alex Ross cover.
Yeah, I remember in issue 49, issue 49 was also like, oh my lord, what a crazy read. But he was finally going to go back through the green door.
Yeah, let's just say this one opens and it starts in Ohio in 1901. So this has been such a kind of revolutionary Hulk story that I think this is definitely going to go down as being like one that you recommend to people if you want to really read a deep Hulk story. You finally got this, finally wrapping up before we get, I think in 3 weeks, the new Hulk number 1 by Donny Cates and Ryan Ottley. So for all of you Immortal Hulk fans, your journey is coming to an end, but don't fret because Al Ewing's moving on to Venom. We've got some really nice variants for this. So we have the Jen Bartel variant.
I like it. Bartel doing a monster.
I know, it was crazy.
She always does people so well. Just a flat out monster this time.
We have the Garson variant, which if you know Garson's work, he did that Conan cover, done a lot of covers, the Venom cover, where the character's made up of a ton of tiny little pictures from their previous issues.
Yeah, that's a great one too.
This one is very cool because of what it is. So this was called, I think, like the Foreshadowing variant. This is by Ryan Stegman, not Ryan Ottley, but Ryan Stegman, drawing what Hulk is going to look like in this next Hulk book coming out.
When I saw that, I was like, what?
Yeah. So this is foreshadowing of the next Hulk series where Hulk is going into space. You saw a little bit of that in the Free Comic Book Day book, but I mean, great Stegman cover. This might be my favorite one. And then I believe there's 12 variants total. We are out of them, but these. And then we have the 1 in 25 Brian Hitch variant. Really nice that we are selling for $30. And it's kind of cool. Brian Hitch doing the cover of this because him and Al Ewing are going to be doing Venom together.
Hmm.
So this is the artist and the writer of Venom coming up together.
That makes sense. Okay, so I read the second issue of He Who Fights with Monsters. I feel like I just read the first. Like, they must have had this come out sooner than expected, which is great. I mean, if you could pull it off in comics, hats off to you. If you can get your issue 2 out when it hasn't even been a month, that's good. It keeps the excitement going. So this, of course, is set in Prague during World War II, during the occupation, where it is just miserable in Prague, unless you're a Nazi. For everybody else, it's awful. They're just taking what they want. They're rounding up all the people they don't like, particularly Jewish people. So this isn't like sort of deep in. This isn't the end of the war. This is sort of the midpoint. Prague is a terrible place where people don't have much either. The Nazis are also just taking the food, taking whatever. There's one part of this where this guy's super happy because somebody paid him with a bag of oranges. It's like, yes, it's a good day for me during this war. I got a paid a bag of oranges. So we got to meet some characters last time. There is the Dr. Radek. He is our main character. He is hiding a lot of Jewish people, and he himself is also Jewish. He just has forged papers, and he's tricked the Nazis last issue. Well, this older man has been telling him, hey, the stories of this creature that our old magic can bring out to fight the Nazis. You should do it. And he's just he doesn't want to. That was all last issue. Well, Radek has a girlfriend who is also secretly helping people, and in this issue she gets a visit from the Resistance, and one of the members of the Resistance is her brother. She's not expecting them either. They just kind of end up at her place, so she has to hide them. So we have multiple stories going on. And the last part that's going on, this is the part I'm waiting for, is Radek ends up going to this old Jewish church, and with the help of the old man, he puts together the golem, and they're going to try to breathe magic into it. So I won't tell you how that all plays out. But what I will say is, going forward, I'm really interested to see what happens in this. The art is awesome. Werther Dell'Edera, it's that Something's Killing the Children art, but in just World War II Prague. And I wonder if the plot is going to stay historically accurate, you know what I mean, within the bounds of what we know in history, or if this is going to end up more like Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards, where it starts off historical and then goes off the rails. I think it's going to be the latter. I think this is going to turn into sort of, well, that didn't happen, but wow, what a story.
Think you're going to get Golem versus Hitler at some point?
Who knows? So I think it's cool. I like historical comics. I mean, this is paced out. It's paced out like a movie. It's not super fast paced, but it's not slow either. There's some real consideration to the dialogue. There's some real character building, but you got to be in for the ride. You have to say, "Hey, I'm here at this time," and let the creepy art sort of do its job as well. So there is this 1 in 10 by Dell'Edera himself that we are selling for $15.
Okay, one I just want to mention, this is Wonder Woman number 780. And as you can see on the cover, Wonder Woman returns. So Wonder Woman has been going through the realm of the gods. She's been kind of in the Norse mythology. She's been in more like classical Celtic mythology, just bouncing around from thing to thing. And when the last one, she was in kind of the fifth dimension with Batmite and all of that. So finally, Wonder Woman returns to her home of Earth. I guess it's Earth Prime, Earth 1. And that's basically what this issue is her kind of going around to all of her people and letting them know she's back. So she goes to the Justice League. It's funny, the first person she runs into is Martian Manhunter, who is eating, they can't call them Oreos anymore, like classic, I think Grant Morrison, JLA, he was always eating Oreos. That's
Mm.
like Martian Manhunter's thing. But he offers Wonder Woman a cookie when she gets back, which I thought was very nice. But it's cool to see her. And of course, since she's been gone, you've had a lot going on in the kind of Wonder Woman sphere. So she kind of finds out what is currently going on with the Justice League because last time she saw him, it was during Death Metal.
Yeah.
Quite a while ago. So now her mother has kind of taken up her place in the Justice League, and she has a conversation with her about that, which is very, very cool to see. Also, with the Amazonians on Themyscira, Nubia is the leader of the Amazons. How does Wonder Woman react to that? And also, there is the little fact that we now have Yara
I
Flor,
was waiting to hear about this. Yeah.
who is out, and so there was that interesting part when Yara Flor kind of landed in Brazil. You had everyone
Yes.
kind of their
moment
notifications
of
went
noticing it,
off
yeah.
like, hey, she's made a move. She's now here. Kind of the same thing happens when Wonder Woman arrives, and you see what the reaction to her showing up is, and Yara Flor seeing that Wonder Woman is back. She finds out as well. So you'll have to read it to find out, but this is kind of the close of the first big story in Wonder Woman. Going forward, it kind of starts a new story arc, but I thought this was a great wrap up to all that's been going on. It's funny reading it, being like, yeah, a lot has happened since she's been gone, and kind of her area of the DC universe. So this is the A cover. There's also a Becky Cloonan variant cover that we are sold out of, but it's very nice looking. But yep, that is Wonder Woman 780.
I just picture she goes to the Justice League base and just Black Adam walks by with a sandwich, like, "Hey."
There's a little
What
bit
are
of
you
that.
doing
There's a
here?
little bit of what are you doing here? And it's great to see also the moments of these are her friends as well, especially Wonder Woman, who is such like a kind and loving person. She really holds the Justice League as part of her family. So you see her and Black Canary reunited, and it's like best friends seeing each other after a long time.
All right, so I was talking about how He Who Fights with Monsters, I felt like, issue one had just came out like maybe 2 weeks ago, it seems like. This is the opposite. Hardware number two. I feel like I read that number one. This had to have gotten delayed a little bit. So the scene we're seeing here with him on the plane, this actually, I think, is going to be more to do with the next issue. This is a little bit of a getting ahead of itself issue. So, Hardware is Curtis Metcalf. He works for a company creating technology, and in last issue, he was framed for a bunch of stuff by his boss who wants to keep his technology, and he ended up having to fight with goons and the police. It was a much bloodier book than I expected. Well, issue two, his boss publicly is saying, "Hey, we got to support Curtis. He's a great guy. He would do this." But of course, behind closed doors, it's all him, and
Yeah.
he's sending his goons still after him, and he has the police on him. Well, what happens when a a young a young man, a kid, gets caught in the crossfire? What does that do to Curtis? How does that make him feel about what he's doing, about what his boss is doing? Let's just say Curtis is not a very forgiving guy. We learned that in the first issue. He is somebody, when he is mad, he will kill you. And so in this issue, it really hits him hard what happens. And it looks like issue three is headed towards some real vengeance, some real reckoning. So we have one variant. This is the Cohen variant. Now this might be sort of a climactic end part to this issue. But knowing what went on, you'll have to read it.
So I'm going to show off now some variant covers. I did not get a chance to read these comics, but did want to show them off. So first off, we have Future State Gotham number 6. This is the Rose Besch cover.
Yeah.
So
Another great Besch cover.
Another great Besch cover, this time with Cassandra Cain on it. And also, just, this series is really good. I think some people were kind of thrown off initially that it's black and white and everything, but this series is really, really good. Can't recommend it highly enough. Also wanted to show off this one. This is for Army of Darkness 1979, issue number 2. But this is the Fleece variant, and if you notice, it is a Stray Dogs kind of crossover cover.
Another one of those.
So we had the
Red
Sonja.
Mm-hmm.
Now this is Army of Darkness. It's very interesting that it's an image book crossing over with Dynamite. So nothing on the interior is about, dogs and Ash teaming up together. But very cool. So if you're trying to collect all of Stray Dogs, you don't want to miss these. I feel like in the future, when we get that inevitable Netflix or HBO Stray Dogs show that has to be in the works, people are going to go back and be like, oh my gosh, did you know they did these covers? So I suggest picking these up if you're collecting all the Stray Dogs series and variants and these little ancillary ones to add to the collection.
And it's not Army of Darkness, but Evil Dead, where it all came from. Evil Dead just had its 30th anniversary, and I know because Megan and I went and saw the showing of it at our local theater. So gotta love Bruce Campbell.
Yes, yep. So. Even looks like he loves dogs.
Okay, so the next one I'm going to talk about, Ka-Zar, Lord of the Savage Land number 2. So there is a new blight in the Savage Lands. It is called the Polyscions, and they are a technical or a technic organic sort of creature thing. It's hard to know what they are. We barely got to see a little of them in the first issue, but it seems that Ka-Zar's son Matthew secretly A, knows about them, and B, might be helping them, which is really messed up because they're trying to take over the Savage Land. So in this issue, Ka-Zar unknowingly, he doesn't know his son knows any of this. This is all from issue 1. They are headed into a part of the Savage Land called the Mold Forest because the tree people who live there have been fleeing. Because, the son's like, why are we going in here? And he's, we're not supposed to be in this part. And he's like, well, these people are fleeing. Let's go see what's going on.
Yeah.
A lot is revealed about the Polyscions in this. In fact, they even meet one who talks, and they get a little bit of answers. You, by the end of it, learn the name of what I would guess is a new villain and is going to be the person behind the Polyscions. So that's a lot of what happens in this issue. We have a variant. This is the Mazebook variant with Sheena on the cover.
Every time I see that, I feel it's very Alex Ross-esque with the color and style and everything.
Yep. Has sort of a painted quality to it.
I'm all out, so I think you've...
Okay,
it's
so
your
the
show.
last thing I was going to talk about is this week, the first trade paperback of Nocterra is released, which Andy and I were talking about how much we have enjoyed this story, some of Scott Snyder's best stuff. As much as I love death metal and metal, as wild as those are, this is like him without DC editors on board. Like, I just feel like with those, he was putting in like 100%. This is the overdrive 110%. It's got a great villain, a really awesome world. It has been optioned as a TV series. The art's fantastic. Like, do you like this cover? That's the artist.
Yeah, Tony Daniel is killing it on the art.
That is what to expect from the inside. So if you haven't been reading this, you want to catch up on this, this is released as of tomorrow. It collects the first 6 issues, which is the first arc. I couldn't even begin to tell you all the things that happened in the first 6 issues.
Yeah, it's a very, every issue, no wasted space in this series.
Yeah. A messed up world. If I had to compare it, it's a little Walking Dead because it's definitely like the world has turned dark, and if you don't do certain things, you're going to be absorbed by that and turned into a monster. But that's about where it ends. Otherwise, his writing's just so different than Kirkman's. They're just as much as I'm fans of Kirkman, their writing style is just real different. Other than they come up with really great concepts,
great characters,
fast paced. The thing I wanted to say about it is this was supposed to come with a book plate. So what that is it is an easy way you can have the creators sign your thing where they don't actually have to be there. Because when they print this and all, they can't ship all those cartons and crates to the creator to have them signed. So they came up with this great thing where instead they basically sign a sticker and then they send it all to us and we put it on. We like to tell you things going on in the retailer industry. The signed book plates are 2 weeks behind. So if you go to your store, you were hoping to get this, hoping to get the book plate, it's not their fault. It's that way for the entire industry. However, if you purchase one of these, at least from us with our customers, we're just telling them, sure, you can buy it right now, come back anytime, and we'll give you the book plate.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have it, and basically you have a signed copy of Nocterra #1, as I will have. So, but that's it. That is our show for the week. That's our reviews, our early reviews of all the issues that are releasing DC today, everything else tomorrow. So I hope we have been helpful. I hope you're armed and ready to go into your comic store tomorrow, knowing what stories entice you, which things that sound like something you should be buying or reading. If so, we've done our job.
Yes.
So I guess that's it. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit subscribe. We just keep inching our way. We're trying to get to that 1,200 mark.
Yep. And we've got our show on Friday, Comics from the Future, where we go over all the open order comics that you can order as many as you want of by that point, and talk about all the really cool stuff coming out soon. So check in for that one as well.
That's right. All right. Well, we will see you all Friday. Have a great rest of your day. Go read some great comics.